I think any one of us can connect to and relate to, regardless of format that we shoot, almost regardless of what we shoot, and definitely regardless of what brand we shoot. So a few weeks ago, I posted a video asking for some feedback about some video ideas, or about what your preference was with photography videos and what you look for. How many camera review videos versus gear review videos versus artistic, stylistic, inspiration, or strategy and tactic type videos. All the other things that are involved with creating and creating photography specifically. And you guys gave me a ton of great feedback, and I took every one of your responses, whether it was on Instagram or through email or through the comment section, and I created a master list, and there was a lot of common responses, a lot of commonalities that arose. So I'm starting to chip away at that and make my game plan for the second half of the year. So hopefully you'll see the benefit of that little survey that I did. And today's video is like a first step in that direction. This video is just me talking about a few books that are a huge inspiration for me, but also a huge inspiration for a countless number of photographers. So the books I want to talk about today, and all we're going to do is just talk about them briefly, and I want to read a couple quotes from them to explain why they're relevant to me now. They are from Ansel Adams, and they are The Camera, The Negative, and The Print. I don't remember when he first published these. It may have been the 60s or 70s. The copies I have were published in 1981, I think. I know his forward in this book is dated 1981. These books explain a lot about his process, from what he calls image management, capturing the image, through developing the negative and creating the print. And through that process of these three books, he does talk about some of the equipment that he uses, some of the equipment that you might be able to use to create and print black and white film photography, because this is obviously in context to when these were released. All photography was film photography. So that's what these are about. They're mostly very tactical related, with some creative decisions type discussions in there. But they're very, very handy if you are a film photographer and you're wanting to understand how the whole process works from capture to print. That being said, I think they can be really inspirational even if you never touch film photography in your life and never intend to. There are still bits and pieces of these books that are extremely helpful, if nothing else, inspirational and thought-provoking. Ansel Adams also developed what he called the zone system. And the zone system, I'm sure you've heard about it by now if you've searched enough YouTube videos, but the zone system is segmenting the general exposure range from extremely bright white to completely dark black, putting those into 11 zones, from what he calls basically zone 0 to zone 10, and understanding how, when you visualize, you're seeing how you're mapping out the exposure to land in those certain zones depending on the look you're going for. And the process through these books is how it talks about how each of these processes contribute to making that image that you want. He talks about visualizing the work, visualizing your image, how important that is, pre-visualization, at least for the stuff he did. And for a lot of photographers, I think this is also true. Visualization is a huge part. And as you get more experience, you start to get better about visualizing what your end product can be, what your print can be, or the photo you're going to share on Instagram, what that might be able to look like. As you get more experience, you'll be able to pre-visualize that. And then it's just a matter of executing it to reach your visualization of what you're of what you're going for. Visualization is an extremely important tool for him. He talks about it constantly, and it's like basically one of the cornerstones of his creative workflow. So even though he's mainly known for these majestic, amazing landscape photography shots, I connect more deeply with his philosophy on photography, on art, and the craft of creating, than just as much with that as I do with his actual prints. I love them, and they were one of the reasons why I wanted to get into photography. But over the years, I've connected more with his philosophy on all this stuff. He has a handful of books that he either contributed to or wrote completely, and almost every book has something unique to offer, even if it's a small nugget. So what I suggest is that if you still have an actual old school library near you, is go see what Ansel Adams books they have there, or see if they can get some, because these may not be worth purchasing for everybody, because if you don't do film photography, you're not going to get the benefit of the complete book. But there's a couple very good nuggets in these books that I love. So what I want to do now is I want to read a couple quotes from these books. So let's read a couple. Okay, so this quote, well, I'll read two little passages, or two quotes from the camera book. Okay, so he says, "The challenge to the photographer is to command the medium, to use whatever current equipment and technology furthers his creative objectives without sacrificing the ability to make his own decisions." So he talks about in here, and in a lot of his books, about how the most important thing for him was being able to make all the creative decisions on the camera if he wanted to. Meaning that if he wanted to operate it in completely manual mode, he would. And obviously, since he shot a lot of large format camera, by default, he was doing everything manually. But even with small 35mm cameras, like he talks about, that started to incorporate automatic features, automatic metering, automatic exposures, and these things, that's fine, but as long as you can take control to adjust and do things on your own. That was a cornerstone of one of his philosophies that he taught. So that's what that quote is talking about. Using whatever current equipment, current technology that's available to your advantage, as long as you can control the tool, control the camera. Okay, this next quote is also from the camera book. He says, "Do not lose sight of the essential importance of craft. Every worthwhile human endeavor depends on the highest levels of concentration and mastery of basic tools." This sounds like maybe a generic quote that anyone could have said about any art, but I think it's important because it leads right into some of the other stuff he talks about, where, just like, a lot of people say that gear doesn't matter, and for the most part, on a general level, that's true. Someone with a low-level DSLR or mirrorless camera can create something as awesome as something created on a $10,000 Leica. But gear does matter to the extent where it's got to be something that you can use and manipulate to create what you want to create. It's got to have that flexibility. So in his mind, it's got to have option for manual controls. So learning the craft in terms of mastering, let's say, the exposure triangle, or mastering how different apertures give you different depths of field, stuff like this, that's extremely important. More important, or equally as important as the gear you choose. And that's what he talks about in the preface of that book, or in the first chapter of that book, that you cannot underestimate the importance of the craft. Okay, two more quotes, one long one. I'll stop and talk, and then I'll read the final one. This one I'm about to read is very interesting because multiple times throughout his books, he talks about digital photography. Now, remember that a lot of these books were published in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I don't remember the first time he started mentioning digital photography. And he called it electronic capture, electronic image. I don't think digital was in the terms he used until later on. But he talked about the idea of digital capture. early on. And this, like I said, this book was printed in 1981. So I love the fact that he was thinking that far ahead on the implications that technology would have on this art form. So here's the quote. I eagerly await new concepts and processes. I believe that electronic image will be the next major advance. Such systems will have their own inherent and inescapable structural characteristics, and the artist and functional practitioner will again strive to comprehend and control them. So this circles back to the first quote I read, where he's looking forward. He says he's looking forward to electronic capture, electronic image. It's going to be, you know, a huge advance. He could see that, and he looked forward to the day when the photographers would learn that tool and learn how to harness it to create the images that they wanted. I just love the fact that one of the pillars of film photography was so open to the idea of new technology. And that part about him has always been inspiring to me, because as someone who lived in my lifetime has straddled that film and digital divide, so to speak, I have a really strong connection to both sides, and I love both forms of photography. Okay, so the last quote, and again this circles back to one of the other quotes about the craft. He says, true freedom in concept and visualization demands a refined craft. So, kind of like I talked about before, but that he's saying, in order to be able to execute your ideas, to execute your vision, you have to master or attempt to master the tools and the craft that you're in. And for us, it's photography, and our tools are cameras and lenses, and either an actual darkroom or the digital darkroom. And that's what he's talking about. Those are just a few quotes from these books, but that gives you a little sample, a little hint on the things he would talk about and write about often. So he would definitely write about, you know, how to meter landscape shots. He would talk about how to process negatives, how to process a print. He talked about all the tactical, technical details for sure. But throughout his series of books that he wrote or contributed to, he also talked about philosophical and art theory and the strategy and tactical approaches to art, and what it meant to be a photographer, and a whole bunch of subjects that are broad but important, and I think any one of us can connect to and relate to, regardless of format that we shoot, almost regardless of what we shoot, and definitely regardless of what brand we shoot. So I encourage you to dive into at least some of these books if you haven't read some of his stuff. See if they have them at the library, check Amazon, or you're better yet, check your local used bookstores if you have them, or go on eBay and see if anyone's selling these for cheap. That's the best way I think we're going to be able to get everyone to experience these, is pass these around a little bit on the used market. That's it for this video. I really just wanted to have a discussion about some of these quotes and some of these books that he wrote, because I just love reading them from time to time, and it gets me excited, it gets me motivated to create again. And I think ironically one of the biggest remedies or fixes for gas or gear acquisition syndrome, as you guys know it to be, is either doing the craft, shooting, editing, being active, or researching and looking for inspiration. All those things help get your mind on the art and less on the camera you don't have or can't afford, or the lens you don't have and can't afford. If you have a camera now, or even a smartphone, you can put some of these ideas that he talks about into practice, like right now. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you've read these books, give me some feedback on stuff you like, or other books like this that you've read, so maybe I can talk about those as well. So thanks again for watching, and just like always, I'll talk to you guys soon.